Good morning. And today we're this hearing is being broadcast live. So we're really excited, and the neighbor islanders are going to be able to web stream in and watch it. So this will be a statewide hearing. So I want to welcome everyone across the state that's involved and everybody here today in the room that took out their time to come. We have a lot of items on the agenda, but we're starting a little early today because we do have a lot on the agenda. And it's a joint hearing between the Committees on Water and Land and Committees on Ocean, Marine Resources, and Hawaiian Affairs. I'm Chair Cindy Evans, head of the Committee on Water and Land, and to my right is Representative Hanu Hanu, who's the chair of the Committee on Ocean, Marine Resources. 797, which is relating to coastal zone management. And first we have Nancy Davlantis. In opposition, Jesse Suki. In support,
good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Jesse Suki. I'm the director of the State Office of Planning. This bill was prepared and drafted by my office. We are the lead agency for the Coastal Zone Management Act in the state of Hawaii, the purpose of which is to provide for the effective management, beneficial use, protection, and development of the coastal zone, which includes the whole state and out into the ocean. But what we're looking at here in particular is one of the tools that we use for managing the coastal zone, and that would be the Special Management Area Permit. So it's the Special Management Area that's developed by counties, which is from the shoreline, Mauka, to usually the first highway, but it can be further inland. And currently the way the Special Management Area Permit works is that counties are responsible for assessing the permit for any development in the special management area, and then depending on whether it's over or under $500,000, the Planning Commission on the neighbor islands or the City Council here in Honolulu gets a final approval of the permit. What we were asked to do in the last legislative session by some of the legislators and the governor was to look at how we might streamline statewide some of the permits that different and various agencies have. So since our office is the lead agency for this particular permit, we looked at the SMA permit. And what we developed working with partners, agencies, federal, county, and people from the community was a permitting process that would allow a streamlined permitting that accomplishes the objective purpose that I mentioned early on for state projects on state land. So it's very narrow, and I hope it stays that way if this passes. It's very narrow, state projects on state land. And basically the way the process works is that if the agency is required to get a CZM federal consistency review, and a federal consistency review is a review that our office does for federal projects that may have a reasonable impact on coastal resources. So if they have that, then they don't need an SMA because it's duplicative. If they don't have a CZM federal review, then the next question they'd ask is, do we want to go through the process that's already in place, or do we want to do a self-certification process? So the way the self-certification process would work is that the agency who has a state project on state land would evaluate the criteria and requirements under the Coastal Zone Management Permitting rubric, and they would put out that review to the public so that the public has an opportunity to comment. Any comments that they have, they would need to address, and our office would have an opportunity to look at it as the lead agency, consultation, and ultimately the agency would sign off on it. And the difference between that streamlined permit and the county review is that the county wouldn't have the final approval. We don't think that that's such a big issue, because a lot of permitting in the state for counties are preempted by the state anyway. This is one of the very few permitting regimes that was set up by the state in the 70s that put the responsibility for reviewing state actions with the counties. So we have had some concerns from the counties about this rubric and this proposal. You know, we've heard that, you know, they like having that decision making on the ground for what happens in the county. So maybe we can work through that. But we believe that based on the request to look for a streamlining effort, this is as good as it can get. We have a regime that will help us achieve the goals and objectives of the CZM policy. It has public comment input. It has consultation with our office. For those reasons, we support the bill.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mary Alice Evans.
Good morning, representatives. DBED stands on its testimony in support of this administration bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Department of Transportation.
Department of Transportation stands in support of this administrative commission.
Thank you. Hawaii Thousand Friends. In opposition, William Island, DLNR.
The department stands in support of this bill.
Anyone else wish to testify?
Good morning. Chairs, members of the committee, my name is Robert Harris. I'm the director of the Sierra Club Hawaii chapter. We're in strong opposition to this measure. It's a really overused phrase, and I apologize for trotting it out again, but this is sort of an example where you're putting the fox in charge of the hen house. While this obviously does streamline state approvals, there's a number of problems with the overall concept. For example, it requires the Office of Planning to consider public comments, but there's no consequences for ignoring them. There's no obligation to actually have to respond to them. There's no obligation to have a public hearing. For example, if there's a neighbor hearing, if there's a neighbor island, there's an obligation to have a hearing in that area where currently the planning department or the county would have that obligation. There's no enforcement capacity, administrative process for violations, or a clear ability to levy fines. It places state projects on a unique course, different than private projects, which does raise questions about sort of way the process overall is being run. It doesn't create an obligation to actually be able to enforce conditions. So, for example, the state promises to do best management practices to reduce soil runoff or everything. There's no really way to enforce those conditions as a part of the process that normally you would have in an SMA. And quite frankly, the experience with state agencies has been some of the worst. Normally, if you have a private developer, private developers have some obligation to have community buy-in. They don't want to be a bad player in the community. Unfortunately, state agencies, I don't want to say they don't think about those things, but they usually come in sort of with a single-track mission. You know, we're here to build a highway, and that's really all we're here for. It isn't necessarily the ability to have to interact with the community as much. And let me give you one example. On Maui, example where the county had specifically wanted to rebuild a highway along through Lahaina. They really wanted to build it further up Mauka. They didn't want to destroy the beach. They'd actually purchased the land. They'd done an EIS to do this. Unfortunately, the state used the governor's power to declare emergency declaration, went ahead and built a seawall along the beach, absolutely destroyed the beach. It's gone. The community will never be able to see that beach again. And we're actually having massive erosion problems. They're going into the coral reef and destroying the coral. Now, if you'd had a public hearing process, if you'd actually gone through the SMA process, I'm sure the county would have registered strong objections and said, no, you know, we want you to move this up further Mauka. There's no real hurdle to doing that. Finally, I would register, and this is, I admit, maybe a little bit of a whiny objection, but they spent a year developing this bill, and at no point did they try to reach out to the community, or in this case, the largest environmental organization in the state of Hawaii, and try and discuss this. Dave Rainey, one of my members, actually is the person in the 1970s that helped pass the Coastal Zone Management Act and spent years doing it. I mean, we have experience. I think we would have been willing to work with the state. The fact that they never picked up the phone is, in of itself, I think, a little objectionable here. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Can you submit written testimony
Absolutely.
for the record? All right.
Absolutely.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Thank you. Indigenous Consultants, LLC. Okay, support. Marine and Coastal Zone Advocacy Council. And support. OHA. offered comments. Anyone else wish to testify? No? Okay. Members, any questions? Yes, Representative Thielen.
Thank you. William, do you mind coming up? And Robert, could you come back up? Every time I hear, let's go streamline the process, my antenna come up, and I think this is probably not going to be a good situation. And I think back to your days sitting across the table as an advocate for the environment and how many times you would challenge those kinds of actions. I'm asking if the purpose was to find a way to do things better, not just streamline, because I don't think streamline improves things necessarily. But if were a way to to do things better, why didn't you reach out to the environmental community? I don't mean you personally, but I mean the department. Why not reach out to the environmental community, sit down at a table and say, does this even make sense to go ahead? And work through that.
I guess
and I'll put on your activist hat from those days that I knew you, William.
I'll do that actually in testimony on a bill later on.
Okay.
But this is the second attempt. Last year there was an attempt to do the very same thing, and so my friend here opposed the bill at that point, and we had many discussions, and we actually had one interesting conversation on a PBS show. And so why we didn't reach out to this group from the Department of Land and Natural Resources standpoint, basically because I felt, and this is actually a state planning bill, so I don't know why. I can't speak for Jesse. You're going to have to ask Jesse.
State planning makes me very nervous too, because state planning that wants to avoid the streamline the process is just like bringing us PLDC too.
Okay, well, I don't think it wasn't an administration bill, so I got to point that out for the record. If there is an opportunity, as my colleague here presents to us, I think we certainly can have some discussions and maybe take a look at some amendments to go forward with this bill. One of the real life situations that the department is in right now is we have a basic repaving of a raceway facility on the island of Kauai, and the tiniest sliver of a corner is in the SMA situation. So we've been held up by the county of Kauai for about a year now on this tiny sliver of a corner that's in the SMA, which is basically repaving the existing racetrack. And so a bill like this, I think, helps us deal with this situation where the county, for some reason, I think is holding things up for what is basically a repair and maintenance job, and the tiniest sliver of the corner is in the SMA, and we're having to go through all of these extra hoops for basically a repaving job. So I think that's the justification for why the department is interested in, as you put it, streamlining, as I would call sort of right sizing for the project at hand.
That's going to be an equally dangerous word, William. Well, you know,
perhaps maybe if I could just echo on
Sure.
that. I mean, that clearly demonstrates the need for conversations, because repair and maintenance is clearly exempted from the SMA process. So if it is truly a project where all you're doing is repaving, this is an example where you don't need the county permission to move forward.
That's not according to the county. So
well, but again, this is an opportunity for a dialogue conversation, and there's examples where on Maui where the DLNR has actually done memorandum of understanding with the county to really talk about how these types of projects move forward, and having the dialogue about where delays are occurring and why delays are occurring and trying to resolve them, rather than simply saying throw the process aside and say we want to create something new where we're able to just get around it, is really the preferable way to do it.
And then that makes sense, Robert, because I look at this as a dangerous bill because it sets a precedent, and maybe it's a sliver today, tomorrow it could be something much more major. But what Robert is suggesting, taking the need for this kind of a bill and putting that into a resolution directed possibly to the counties and maybe the county of Kauai to say, come to the table and let's find a way to do these repair and maintenance projects where there won't be major damage. But I'm not ready to put a PLDC2 through. And I think it's just dangerous to do that. And I think the word streamlining, if that's coming from the 5th floor, I think we ought to ask the 5th floor to rethink that. Because the public made it real clear with the PLDC outcry that streamlining is not what we want. Protection of our resources, our natural resources, our state lands is what we want. And I think what Robert is suggesting makes a great deal of sense. And sorry as I'm lecturing, but I am tired of the departments coming, and I'm sorry, William, because you would have been opposing this in your former life. But I'm tired of the departments coming and saying.
Thank you. So to keep the committee going, I just want everybody to know that the chair and I have conferred. We will be deferring this bill, so we won't be voting it out. But Representative Kaufman, question, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Mr. Harris.
Yes.
The coastal zone management laws, you're implying that they're not adequate?
I'm not sure if that's what I'm saying. Again, right now, the way the law was passed in the 1970s is that the counties had strong concern. They really wanted to make sure that the authority and responsibility was delegated to the counties. So they had the ability to authorize it.
Authority, but the federal coastal zone management laws are inadequate to take care of our state coastal areas. That's what I'm hearing you say. And we need additional.
The Federal Coastal Zone Management Act delegates everything to the state to decide how to move forward, and they require that you've complied with what the state has decided. So here, if you've gone through the state process, the federal government says that's okay. So if you make a very weak state process, the federal government will say, okay. So again, here, this is a situation where the state gets to decide whether or not you want to protect the special coastal areas that are unique and special to Hawaii. And this was a decision made, again, in the 1970s, how this process worked. And it's a process that, generally speaking, has worked very well.
And the Sierra Club helped put this together, the coastal zone management.
This was, yes, years of legislation, discussion. A number of stakeholders were involved.
Okay, thank you. Office of Planning, if I may, Chair.
Yes.
Chair. I think I heard two words from you, the word streamlining, which seems to have gotten some people upset, but also the word that this is to avoid duplication. Mm-hmm. Which word fits better?
Well, I think they both fit. I think there's a misunderstanding and mischaracterization about what we're trying to accomplish here. Streamlining is not exemptions, and I have never supported exemptions. We're not talking about that here. We're talking about fulfilling the promise of the purpose of the law that was established in the 70s, but using a different system to get to that same point. The system hasn't been working specifically for some state projects where there's been disputes on the ground level between counties and the state about how they evaluate and process these permits. In many places, the state preempts, but we're not asking for an exemption here. All we're saying is that there's another process we can follow. And also, while we looked at it and looked at streamlining about how we can do it better, we realized that there was some duplication. For example, with the CZM federal consistencies reviews that our office does, is the same thing that an SMA permit does, more or less. We look at the same criteria under 205A-2, which are the state policies for CZM, but there is no contested case, but there is a public comment period. Much like the EIS law, there's no contested case, there's a public comment period. So what we're looking here for the streamlining effort is that there'll be a public comment period, but not a contested case. I'm not sure that the people who opposed the bill actually read it. There is a requirement in there that the agency that's responsible for making this review shall provide its responses to its comments to the community. So the community will have an opportunity to look at those comments. And at the end of the day, the big hammer is that people can sue if they don't like the way that it's handled. And we took specific cautions because we are concerned about the public having an opportunity to have an input in this process still. We're not taking them out. So they'll be able, under the statute, if an agency chooses to follow this process, they're required to make all of this open and available to the public, not just under the Chapter 91 or 92 request, but through this process, it'll be available.
Thank you.
Okay. One moment. Yeah, Representative Lowen.
So I'll ask you this, Jesse, but if anyone else has an answer, you can jump up here. With SMA, there's an existing exemption process for minor actions already?
Yes.
And same for Chapter 343?
Yes.
So do you think that agencies claim exemptions as they should be claiming them to promote efficiency and not sort of going through the process when actually they don't need to, and there is an existing process where they could claim an exemption already?
So let's be clear. We're talking about exemptions within the rubric of an environmental review process. So we're not talking about wholesale exemptions, which I don't
Yes,
like.
like exactly.
Right. So
yeah.
you're talking about within the process. So the type of exemptions that are in the SMA, for example, are for impacts that the legislature has determined are minor and not going to have any
Yes.
repairs
Right.
to existing structures.
So what
Right.
I'm saying is,
I think I'm not familiar with all of the facts that Mr. Ayala was talking about, but if the exemption list applies, but if there's a cumulative impact notwithstanding the exemption, then the county would require a review through the SMA permit process, so it wouldn't be an exemption anymore. So maybe that's what happened there. The county made an interpretation, I don't know, that maybe the exemption is here, but there's too many impacts, so we're going to have to look at it through an SMA assessment. That could be the case. So
I guess what I'm getting at is, do you ever think there's a case where an agency could claim an exemption, but they choose not to? An exemption meaning like a categorical exemption that's already in the rules, that environmental groups and everyone is okay with. It's already in there. The process could be more efficient if they claim the existing exemptions that are already there, but they choose not to.
Well, I actually think the streamlining process is better than an exemption, because an exemption means you then don't do anything. I'm exempt, I'm going to go build. With this process, there's always going to be a constant consultation and an opportunity for the public to comment. If they choose this process, they could also choose the existing process.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm sorry. I have to make one last comment. We did coordinate in the MACSAC, the Marine Advocacy Council is an autonomous board in our office that are made up of 2 members from each of every counties from the community. And one of their tasks is to spread the word about these issues to their constituents, and they have. We also coordinate with over 40 different federal, state, county, and community people who are involved in the update of our Ocean Resources Management Plan, who had a look at this and was able to comment. You're not going to make everybody happy with a proposal, but we're trying to meet the objective of making this system more efficient for achieving the purpose of the law, and this is what we came up with through that consultation.
Okay.
Well, I just wanted to add a comment. In your streamlining process, are you also going to be inclusive of the spatial marine plan? Is it inclusive in there? Because this is a federal mandate.
For this particular process, spatial planning is not part of it, but at some point in the future...
Then why not?
Yeah, no, at some point in the future, because, that's a separate project we're working on. We want to get a better understanding of what's going on in the ocean, so we're seeking opportunities to use spatial planning, which is basically geographic information about where things are happening in the ocean, to have a better understanding when working through the permitting process of knowing what's on the ground. It's always good to have the best available science and best information. So we're looking at receiving funding for working on the project soon. We're actually competing for it with other coastal states, and if we get those monies, then we will be because we have an Ocean Resources Management Plan update now, so something that will add to make that a stronger plan. We've had good support and comments for.
But aren't we the coastal state?
Oh, so that project we're talking about is for state waters. It's for
right.
Yeah,
it's for state waters, but being that Hawaii is all surrounded by water, so wouldn't that have been a priority? That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it is a priority, but not as part of this this proposal. It's not. It's a separate project that we're working on, which could inform it in the future, but for now that's not part of it.
Right, and then I heard you. What was that word you had used? Well, we know we're already in the process of doing the AHA MOCA, right? So those are generational cultural practitioners that know the lands, whether it's from the mountain to the sea. So are they going to be inclusive in your talk stories or your to consult with them?
Absolutely. For example, with the Ocean Resources Management Plan update that we're working on now, which doesn't include a spatial component, which would be, getting geographic information of the oceans and things. But for that planning effort, we went across the state in 2 rounds. Sometimes we had more than one meeting in various communities, and we publicized it to the hilt, and we had all kinds of people show up from the community. On our ORMP, we interface with also OHA and DHHL. And so when the AHA MOCO has their system set up, we consult with DLNR, and the AHA MOCO advises DLNR, so we'll work with them through that mechanism.
Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Okay, if not, we're going to recess the joint.